Ladies and gentlemen, in this Red Gaming Silicon video, let us discuss Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. So, the developers behind the game, also known of course as Sledgehammer, have made a couple of comments regarding the graphics of the title. For a start, they are aiming for parity across all of their platforms. So to give you a bit of background, previously developers got a little bit of stick regarding Call of Duty Ghosts. Now, Ghosts ran at 720p on the Xbox One compared to 1080p on the PS4, although frame rates were pretty comparable, to be fair. Brett Robbins, and he's actually the creative director of the title, has said, right, well, you know, we always strive for complete parity across all our platforms, and you know this year's going to be no different. There are all sorts of new technology, from rendering to the way we do our characters. We have a new shape blend technology that we use in the face, and it really brings out a lot of animation just across the board. The audio engine is a lot more powerful, and we've got tons and tons of updates to the technology. Now, what we do know regarding the resolution of the title is that it's ahead of Call of Duty Ghosts, but right now Sledgehammer haven't actually settled down on an exact figure, so pixel count is basically up in the air so far. Now, the co-founder of the developer has said to OXM that what they are not going to be doing is producing basically misleading footage, and we all know that that's a major problem right now in the gaming industry. Some people have already accused Call of Duty of doing similar, so they basically looked at it and said, look, these are pre-scripted events. This is the accusation. They've said, look, these are pre-scripted events. It's not going to look like that on the consoles. It's just going to look worse. Now, Michael Codry, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Actually, I'm pronouncing that completely wrong. I just realised it's Condry. That's C-O-N-D-R-E-Y. For some reason, my brain just kept farting and missing the N. He said, we've always had a commitment to delivering a target spec. We're not a studio that's just going to go out and show off some flash-in-the-pan, high-end PC demo that's never going to be able to be put on consoles. We worked very closely with Microsoft throughout the 3 years to understand where they were going and stayed right in parallel. There's nothing effortless, but Microsoft was a great partner for Call of Duty. And indeed, they've even stated that they actually really thank Activision, not just for the extra year, but for the singular focus. 3 years to get to next generation. The current gen game, and there's nothing more new to come about that, never got in our way of our ambitions. It's never stopped us from being super creative about taking full advantage of next generation hardware. It decoupled us from worrying about having to do a split platform year like titles had to last year. So that was really refreshing, gave us some great freedom to go after right after this one. Now, the remainder of the interview is in the next issue of OXM, so if you guys want to check that out, and go ahead. But what this demonstrates to me is a couple of things. Firstly, the original Call of Duty, well, should I say Call of Duty Ghosts, obviously suffered. It suffered across all platforms. Like, PC sales were, well, let's just say the word shit. Developers, you know, should I say players just knew it wasn't that great on PC. The graphics weren't that great, even a high-spec rig, really. I mean, sure, you got the high frame rate, but the FOV was quite laughable, especially at the start. And even ignoring the FOV issues, the graphics weren't that amazing. Even on consoles, they weren't impressive either. But, you know, PC, you've got that extra level, so you think to yourself, well, and it just wasn't that impressive. And many would agree that it wasn't an evolution of Call of Duty, at least what you'd expect from a next-generation title. And the reason behind that, as anyone would be able to probably figure out, is that it just had the stink, the odour, the noose around its neck from the previous generation, the Xbox 360 and PS3. They basically were suffocating the consoles, the next-generation consoles and the PC. What I do like, and obviously his statements aren't fact yet, in my personal opinion. I want to see what the differences are. Now, parity is a bit of an ugly word. It's great if you're an Xbox One owner, but parity is a very ugly word if you're a PC owner. Because, even to a degree, a PS4 owner. Because what you've got to wonder, and I've no doubt these questions are already being popping up on forums is, does it mean that the PS4 version and the PC version are going to get nerfed effectively to make the Xbox One version on the same wavelength? And what I'm hoping is no. What I'm basically hoping is that the console versions, they look the best they can on their respective platforms. As we all know, resolution isn't necessarily indicative of the quality. So what I mean by that is that you can have a game rendered at 4K but still look worse than another game rendered at 720p simply by turning down the graphical effects. Like, for example, let's say the 4K has no post-processing, for example, no anti-aliasing, it's not got any anisotropic filtering, they've turned down the texture quality substantially, the geometry is a lower quality as well, the draw distance is significantly inferior, and so on and so forth. Yeah, sure, you've got a higher pixel count, but it doesn't necessarily look nicer. And aesthetically, you would probably choose the 720p title. So obviously in this case, just because the two games are, let's assume they're running at the same resolution. Once again, as far as I understand it, they haven't settled on the resolution, but let's assume, just a sake of argument, this is not confirmed, just an example, let's say they're both running at 900p. It could still be that the PS4 version has a slightly more stable frame rate, or it could be that the PS4 version has, let's say, better anti-aliasing, or it could even be a case where it has better, say, quality on distant textures or distant objects or whatever. It's very difficult to know. I'd like to see that, and of course, when we do our analysis and tech tribunal analysis of that, we will be checking this out quite, well, in depth, because let's face it, I think we all have quite great expectations of what we actually expect to see in this game. What I'm hoping is that the FOV isn't quite so punishing. I mean, there could also be some issues with the FOV. Consoles typically go with a lower FOV, like, for example, 65 to 75, generally 70. One of the purposes behind that, of course, is that it just basically helps to keep the frame rate up because, well, it's just not showing as much. It's basically kind of zooming into the image. Now, for a PC owner, because we're playing A, close to the screen, and B, we've got the hardware to do it, typically we prefer FOVs in like the 90s, maybe even hundreds, like the low hundreds, say 105, 110. Personally, I don't even feel bad playing like Far Cry 3 at like 100 to 110 FOV. I actually think it looks quite nice, especially if you're on top of like a hillside. I think that looks absolutely amazing, actually. But I do realise for a lot of people, FOV on that type of level is maybe a bit too high, and so an FOV of like 90 to 95 is generally considered to be pretty acceptable. So I'm hoping that we do see a FOV slider of a reasonable amount on the PC version. I mean, for example, when Ghosts was first released on the PC, there was no FOV slider, and in fact they even basically stated, and obviously this is Infinity Ward, so there's a complete difference here. It's not, it's nothing to do with the developers behind Advanced Warfare, who are of course Sledgehammer. But Infinity Ward initially even said, look, we're not even planning to put in an FOV slider, and indeed there were actually third-party patches. And then there was an update, there was an official patch where added an FOV slider into the multiplayer aspect of the game, and to be honest with you, that was one of the reasons that the game definitely got pounded on a little bit by PC critics, because we're like, yeah, this is pathetic. So yeah, I'm actually really happy with the direction that they're going with this game, and it does sound like they're basically improving a lot of the aspects that IW simply just didn't get around to doing. I do feel some of this was definitely constrained by the previous generation, so I for one am quite excited. I realize some people have actually been somewhat negative actually on what they've said. I mean, I actually quite like the look of the trailer. I'm not a massive like Call of Duty nut, I'll just be totally honest. I played like Black Ops 1 a bit, and Call of Duty 4 quite a bit, but I haven't really played the others too much. However, I will be totally honest with you, I actually like the look quite a bit of the trailer for Advanced Warfare. So we shall see. Anyway guys, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care, and bye for now.